What is up, guys? My name is Darren Jackson. Welcome back to the channel. Glad you could stop by. Welcome if you're new, by the way. And Cathie Woods strikes again. She obviously does not sleep, but that could be a good thing. And I say that because on March 30th, which is actually last week, she unveiled a new ETF that made its inception to the stock market. So we're going to talk about all of that in a beginner's perspective, because I still consider myself a new investor. I've been investing a little over a year now. There's still things I'm learning every single day. Speaking of which, we're going to define this ETF. I'm going to tell you the ticker symbol, what it actually means, what the sectors are that it actually entails. We're going to go over some details on the top holdings that this ETF has. We're going to focus a little more on the top 3 or 4, maybe some extra stocks or companies within the ETF that are a little interesting and may be of some point that I may prove later on. And then after that, I'm going to talk about my personal opinion as a new investor. I feel like that's important because I'm going to talk about if I think you should invest into this ETF, if I personally think I should invest into this ETF. And it's a little interesting because there's definitely, in my opinion, 2 different answers. So make sure you stay tuned for that, because this could be something that a lot of you guys have been thinking about when it comes to new ETFs, including this ETF. So let's not waste any time and let's get started. So the new ETF that Cathie Woods and her team of researchers over at ARK unveiled or incepted on March 30th is called ARKX. That's the ticker symbol. And it stands for the ARK Space and Exploration Innovation ETF. So a lot of big words that sound really exciting. But basically, it's defined as an ETF that looks for specific companies that create products or offer services that have to do with exploration beyond Earth. So first things that you and I may think about are rocket ships and satellites and cities on Mars and stuff like that, which would be pretty cool. But that's pretty much what they're focused on. Now, if you actually go on the ARK ETF website and you look specifically at ARKX, they actually elaborate on some of, I guess you can call it the subsectors within the sector of space and exploration that they focus on. And those range from orbital aerospace and suborbital aerospace, which have primarily to do with products and, again, services that on an orbital perspective are involving like satellites that stay beyond the orbit of Earth, or suborbital where it doesn't require any type of engine to stay beyond orbit of Earth, so it'll come landing down soon. They also have enabling tech, which has a lot to do with robotics and 3D printing and stuff like that. And another one called aerospace beneficiary. This one I find to be pretty interesting, primarily because of what it serves in itself. But I'll talk a little more about that towards the end of this video, where I give my opinion on if I feel like this may be a good ETF for you and I to invest in right now. So basically, again, the summary of this ETF is space exploration, anything that has to do with space exploration. But with that being said, let's go into some of the top holdings within this ETF. So when I was on the website and I looked at the top 10 holdings, which is pretty simple to find, it's just I think a summary or holdings per prospectus, a PDF format that you actually look into that will show you all the holdings it has. There were a lot of companies, especially within the top 5, that I honestly hadn't heard of, or at least heard briefly of, but wasn't sure what they're all about, including Trimble, Kratos Defense and Security. These are companies, Trimble, for example, has a lot to do with GPS, basically, and I can understand how that can be portrayed in space exploration, knowing where you're going. It makes sense. Kratos Defense Company, just like other companies like Lockheed Martin, which is also a part of this sector. They are military contractors that build things, military defense related stuff, and obviously space related stuff. Other companies like Boeing, which are a little far off the top 5, they are involved in International Space Station and satellites and stuff like that. One of the interesting things I noticed, and yeah, you're probably noticing right now from their top 5, is their second actual company in their holdings is the 3D printing ETF. And I know what you're saying, Darren, this looks really, really familiar. Why does this look familiar? It looks familiar because if you look at their index ETFs, one of the ones you'll see is the 3D printing. I think they only actually have 2, and one of them is the 3D printing ETF. So they actually have one of their own ETFs, one of the largest sectors within their, or one of the largest holdings within this new ETF. Obviously, it can be imagined that 3D printing is going to have a lot of impact within space. Personally, how much do I know of that? Nothing really. A lot of you guys may know, so leave comments below if you can elaborate on some of the things that are being built by 3D printing. I'm sure rockets and stuff like that could be being printed at this point in time, but there's little of that I honestly know about. But again, I thought it was really interesting that one of their largest holdings within the sector of ARKX is another ETF that's within the ARK family, but you know, it is what it is. Another thing I thought that was really, really interesting is that you go all the way down towards the bottom of all the holdings that they have, you're gonna see a company that also looks familiar. It's called Netflix. No, it is not a new Netflix that has anything to do with space exploration or orbits or satellites or International Space Station. It's the Netflix that you chill to. It's that Netflix. I honestly don't know why that Netflix, I don't know why Netflix in general is within holdings of not a company, but an ETF that's supposed to be summarized as space exploration. Honestly, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head it has to do with is just a company they believe in that's going to continue to rise in popularity, and people are going to continue to subscribe to it. It's going to continue to be innovative within its own realm, meaning it's going to create more income and more revenue and more money for everybody like you and myself that may be investing into that originally, but more importantly in this situation, for Cathie Woods and her team at ARK and ARKX. So maybe they could sell some of those holdings and put them towards other companies that make more sense in this category, like SpaceX, or Virgin Galactic Holding, I'm sorry about that, that is also a part of the holdings within this ETF. So I thought that was really interesting. Now, with that being said, do I feel like this is an ETF that you and myself should invest in from a beginner's perspective? And again, I say that because it's very important. There's two answers in my personal opinion. Here is answer number one. So just strictly being a new investor, my mindset goes like this. Guys, this ETF is $20 a share. Roughly $20 a share right now. It's an ARK ETF. Look at the other active research and knowledge ETFs within ARK. Look where they're at right now. Look where they started. They have doubled, tripled, quadrupled over the past 5 years. Don't you think this ETF is going to do the same thing? Why not invest in it right now and make the income when you have the opportunity? This is going to be crazy. So I feel like that's a very valid reason why to invest into it, because just the history of what the team over at ARK, led by Cathie Woods, has been able to do with the active resource knowledge, which by the way, or active research and knowledge, which by the way is, you know, ARK, and how that's been able to result in the X amount of years of growth within all ETFs. So you could say that, hey, this should be the same thing because this is researched by the same team over at ARK that did ARKK and ARKG and ARKF, et cetera, et cetera. However, the other answer, in my honest opinion, is I don't really know. So my research into space exploration and companies that have to do with that, and military defense companies and any type of technology company that has to do with space isn't super major. So if yours is, definitely leave comments below on how you feel about ARKX in general. But there's definitely a lot more research that is needed when it comes to deciding if you want to invest into this company or into this ETF. I think there's a lot of research that you need to do with each individual company. Before I made this video, I had to look up what Trimble was. I had absolutely no idea. And when you even go further back to those separate mini sectors I was talking about, if you look on the ARK ETF website, the aerospace beneficiary, one of the first mini definitions I saw was agriculture. I'm not really sure what agriculture and space have anything to do with each other, maybe except with some of the technology they use, again, like GPS and drones. And obviously those can be implemented, or the same technologies that are applied to those can be applied to other things in space, robotics and rovers and stuff like that. But out the gate, it does leave me to be a little bit skeptical. So this is what I'm gonna do. With that being said, for those of you guys that are interested, by the way, appreciate it. Honestly, pardon me for the sake of the matter that this is a brand new ETF that's made by the same company that have other ETFs that have grown tremendously. And this is probably just, you know, the naivety of it all, but it is what it is. I'm gonna probably invest in a couple of shares of it while it's at roughly $20 a share. Investing with money that if I lose it, I'm not going to be too sad about it, which is how I feel like everybody should be investing in a healthy aspect, investing with money that you can sacrifice. But while I have those there, I'm going to do the additional research. And I feel if I feel like this is a valid ETF just based off the holdings that they have, then I'm going to invest more. And I really recommend other investors, especially if you're a new investor, to do the same. Obviously, do what you want at the end of the day, but I always preach how I really feel like ETFs are super beneficial for new investors, primarily with the diversity. Obviously, the ETFs within the ARK family, with the exception of ARK Innovation, which is ARKK, they're not as diverse. They have their own separate categories. So it just depends on if you feel like that specific category is going to be revolutionary within the future. So there's definitely a lot of research that needs to be entailed before you actually make a decision, but just like any other stock. So with that being said, guys, let me know what you think about Cathie Woods' new move to implement this new ETF within the stock market, being ARKX. What do you think about the companies that they're holding on to? What do you guys think about the future of this ETF? And on a side note, what's your favorite ETF within this family? I'd definitely like to hear you guys' answer in the comments below. And speaking of other things, make sure you guys watch these other videos that I've made that hopefully help you guys on your investing journey as they have in mine. I appreciate you guys watching so much. And until next time, take care.